Dearest, gentle listeners, you are listening to the Ladies Bridgerton, the talk of the ton. We are your effervescent hosts, your neighborhood-friendly Kiwi, tasked from Middle-earth, New Zealand.
And Patty, Regency romance enthusiast, whose current chapter of her story takes place in Ohio.
Settle down onto your favorite settee as we delve into the lives of the elite and illustrious ladies, lords, and royalty of the ton. This Bridgerton podcast is two friends talking romance, symbolism, Easter eggs, and deep diving into the connections of our favorite characters. This podcast covers both book and TV series and therefore will contain spoilers.
Tonight, we gallop along with our side stories. We didn't get very far in the chaos that is us last time. So in this episode, we'll be discussing the Featherington Bros and how they are afraid of Portia. And then she has to school her daughters. Portia has it rough. Good thing Penn has Colin. And the fates only know what else we might get to once the Featheringtons do us in.
Hopefully they don't do us in too much in this episode because as the listeners can probably hear, I still have a cold. So Patty is going to be on her best behavior not to make me laugh and go into more coughing fits this week.
Fingers crossed, I'll try.
No promises.
No promises.
Now we must make haste into today's episode. So where we left off is we were talking about the debutantes approaching Colin and Benedict and basically how the double standard was between how it is, you know, we condemned the men for hunting in packs, but the women do the same. And I do love that they brought that to light. And then we have another kind of flipped script moment of male, female gender roles kind of being a little bit flipped again when we have Portia Featherington approaching the Featherington Bros and Penelope and absolutely tearing strips into them that they are not basically on her daughters, making the heirs as they speak.
Well, yeah, it's like until we have an heir, you have to be in their presence 24/7. Like at a ball, they're going to be creating an heir. I mean, come on. Did they really need to be right next to their ladies in this stranger's home? I mean, I don't want to say stranger. They might know them, but they're invited. But like, this isn't our home. What are we going to do? Sneak off to a bedroom?
I mean, they did try to sneak off behind a tent, so...
Yeah, but they weren't trying to get any further than a kiss behind that tent.
Danky seemed like he might have.
No, he just said, my lips must have yours or something like that.
Yeah,
which is funny, like how, I mean, just how not passionate he seems. And like, that's how you know Colin is feral Colin outside the modiste, is because Mr. Dankworth is like, my lips must have yours. And it's just not the same.
One is like a PG romance novel and the other one is a smut novel.
One is like a tweenie bop kind of. It's like High School Musical versus I can't even there's nothing I can say on here that's appropriate.
Pretty much. But I love the way that the Featherington Bros describe their wives. You know, well, I mean, technically Portia described Philippa as a pastry. Your wife is a pastry, Mr. Finch. Mm-hmm. Treat her as such.
Well, because he gets so excited because I sent her after pastries. Your wife is a pastry, Mr. Finch. And Penelope clocking that and like laughing at it. Like, but you can just tell.
I mean, it was one of those like, oh, you're adorable.
Well, and I think she was thinking about what her mother said because she doesn't really know. She knows some. She's a reader, so she can imagine what her mother means, right?
Yeah.
And it's just her reaction. Like, you can see that she and her mother have a lot more in common than she wants to admit. Then, like, they're both intelligent and have this witty sense of humor that she's like, gosh, like, I'm glad that's not me. I'm glad it's not me.
And apparently the whole pastry thing is not just a Bridgerton thing, it's also a Featherington thing, because the Bridgertons also enjoy themselves a pastry, a sweet moment, a lick of ice cream off a spoon.
Well, and I think that's what's, that's, I don't want to say that's what's funny, but it's kind of like
it starts with
everything
cake.
with everything with the Bridgertons is when you're seeing the person you are attracted to eating something, they can't take their eyes off your lips, right? Like they're like, they want to be the pastry,
I
But
mean, to
in
be
the
fair,
Featherington
Patty,
home, it all starts with cake, and your partner is the pastry. So each side, Colin and Penn are both being taught the other one is a pastry.
maybe they're onto something because your most successful TikTok video to date is of you eating chicken wings.
That's not a pastry. And that that
but
was
but
my
the
favorite
eating.
video. That was my favorite video to make though, because I was just pointing out, like, I've seen that scene. I've seen the whole season, honestly, probably 1,500 times. But like that scene, I was just like, everybody was doing those reaction videos about being so excited about it. Like when it happened, like seeing it for the first time. And I'm like, well, I can't do that. So I'm going to be real here. Like I can watch that eating.
I
I
can watch
watch
that.
it.
I can watch it on the toilet. I can watch it whilst eating. You
Right.
should have done a collage of like all the times in a day that you can just sit and watch it. And that was my version of watching Bones. As people used to be like, how can you watch that and eat dinner? And I'm like, dinner in a show. Like, yeah, they're
Now, see,
performing an autopsy, but
I can talk about gross stuff at the dinner table, but I couldn't watch like gory stuff
oh, I'm fine.
I don't think. But like I've always been a romancy girl, and yeah, because I explained Bridgerton to someone who's never seen Bridgerton that it's exactly me. It's perfect for me. Complete
It's
comfort food
Downton
for me.
Abbey meets Gossip Girl.
Well, I said it's romance, it's Regency time period, which I love, and there's sex scenes. My comfort food is exactly how I described it. So it's my pastry, it's my dessert, and
Is it a bonbon? Hard on the outside, soft on the in. I don't know about that, Mr. Finch. I think it is hard the whole way through. She is a she is a chocolate covered almond. If you have dentures, you may crack a tooth.
well, she might be the bonbon, and he might be the chocolate covered
I
almond.
wouldn't say that is far more accurate and just a little bit nutty.
Who's making who laugh now?
And you were right. You did go dead silent.
I know, so it's gonna get cut out, so that's fine.
Trunicate
I
silent.
do, because okay, so there's a promo. The promo where they're reading the old Regency like pickup lines.
Yes.
And he reads the one
Luke
about
Newton
sitting on the fence.
He blushes. He
read the one about sitting on the fence, and he covers his face, and you can't tell really if it's him or her, but one of them laughs like it's wheezy and super high pitched. That when I'm really laughing, that's how I laugh. Like I have the loud laugh too, but when I'm really going and I can't even anymore, like it just becomes wheeze and it's super high pitched. Like when I heard that, I was like, that's me. That's totally me.
I don't even have to try for the
can't
wheeze
really tell
laughter
who it
today.
is. You can't even tell who it is of the two of them because they're both laughing. I'm like, who's making that laugh? I need to know.
I think it's usually Nicola because she does wheeze a lot in her laughter and I feel her.
Yeah, I love it. But yeah, I think that her explaining like you need to treat your wife like a pastry, and he says bonbon, which is it's not so much, it is still a sweet treat.
Because isn't a bonbon like essentially an eclair but round?
Sort of. It's like, yeah, it's like I mean, what I know bonbons to be are like a hard candy, chocolate candy shell type thing around like ice cream type creamy center.
It was a custard filling was when I looked it up.
Yeah,
typically a custard
well,
filling.
we in the US we had bonbons that were kept in the freezer, and they were like frozen custard, like ice cream surrounded by chocolate candy hard shell.
Okay. I'd never even heard of a bonbon. I had to look it up.
So, but yeah, I think that on the Featherington side, they're always told you need to treat your partner like a pastry. And the Bridgertons are always like, man, you're when you eat that whatever sweet thing you're eating, that cake or icing or ice cream or whatever, I just gotta have your lips. I want to taste that off of you. Like they're the equivalent. Colin and Penn being from these families are the equivalent of like those really kinky people that just we're gonna do whipped cream, here's some fudge sauce, like what can I eat off of you this evening, my friend? I
love that that's your version.
I mean,
oh, my sweet little summer child.
I'm saying like that is still kink. That's not your typical bread and butter.
Well, I mean, there can be bread and butter too. Moving on to Eloise.
I grew up in a church family. Everything is kink that isn't missionary.
I'm gonna bypass and I'm gonna plead the fifth and move on to Eloise. Eloise and Debutante.
Well, I like in this season that we get to know more debutantes.
We actually get to know them as individuals this season, more than just Cressida.
Yeah, I mean we don't get a lot, but we get enough, I think, to give us the idea. Because in the other seasons, even though they talk, like with Daphne's season, they talk about there being 200 debutantes that made that presentation, but we never see that many. Right.
No.
So I like that they do show more. It makes more
And
sense if
I
there's
think
this many young ladies.
I think it was important that they did it in this season specifically for us to understand as viewers and previously as readers, even because they didn't describe the debutantes in the books at all. Julia Quinn didn't describe them. So I think it was really important for us to see why Penelope and Eloise alike felt so out of place amongst these girls.
Yes.
And Francesca,
and you can see like Eloise is so uncomfortable. Like even when she's
fitting in,
like her whole rant about, always saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, which I pretty much think is a trait. But think all the times Colin says something that they're siblings, guys. And I think, and Penn says the same thing, like, her character gets stuck between her heart or mouth. Like, especially these three, you can't, what comes out of their mouth a lot of the time, especially if they're nervous or upset or, not practiced, it may not be exactly what they want to say. What was I watching? Or I saw a post about something. I'm not going to think about it now. I've had a big day. I can't tell you how tired I am. It was something about,
I'll talk and you think. So
yeah.
I think it was really, really important for us to see who the debutantes are and also just how single-minded they are. We don't see, we see they enjoy cross stitch. They enjoy dreaming about their future husbands. Do they ever talk about a single other thing? Oh, what their weddings are going to look like. Okay, cool. Do they talk about books? Do they talk about their hopes, their fears, their aspirations? No, their aspirations are purely to be married and to have the most advantageous marriage possible. They don't even
most
care
of
for
them don't even talk about the marriage. They talk about the wedding. And that's how, truthfully, that's how a lot of it is in 2024. You see a lot about the wedding and how much gets spent on the wedding. And I've planned my whole wedding since my childhood and all these things. Weddings have gotten really big,
out of control.
And
well, there is a statistic saying the more that you spend on a wedding, the more likely you are to get divorced.
Well, I didn't spend that much on my wedding.
What? No, but the statistic
I spent more on my divorce than I did my.
The statistic states the more you spend on a wedding. Statistics don't mean everything.
But I kind of knew I was going to be divorced someday when I got married.
I make good life choices. I love my husband. He's adorable.
I made a good life choice. I got married to be able to adopt my son.
It was a good life choice. You got a boy out of it.
It was
gorgeous
boy. I don't regret it. I just knew going in that it wasn't going to last. So it was definitely, it was more like, I don't want to say a marriage of convenience either, because it was not convenient, but it was a necessity because of the laws at the time for adoption in that state. So, and I'm not going to name states.
Speaking of convenient, Eloise is trying to find her friendship of convenience and it is just not coming to her because these girls, I think there's a few of the girls who she already knows are quite mean-spirited and that kind of thing. We don't ever see, and I think that's why we don't ever see her. We see her gossip, like spread the gossip to Miss Livingston at, who was it that she tells? No, it was Miss Hallowell and Miss Malhotra. I don't think we ever see Miss Livingston and Eloise actively talking. They're in the same group together, but they never actively talk. And I think that's because Eloise still has some sort of standard. Like, yes, she has been willing to give Cressida a chance, but that's because Cressida is showing her at least a much kinder side. And I think she's hoping, okay, well, if Cressida has a kinder side, if Penelope is so quiet to everyone else, but once you get to know her, she's got this amazing mind. I think she's hoping that if she just talks to these girls, she will find something deeper below the surface. And the more she talks, the more she realizes that that is just not the case and that Penelope is a rarity. She is a diamond. Well, she is an emerald. She is an emerald amongst a sea of diamonds, of basic diamonds.
Well, and I've said it all the time.
I'm sorry, they're not even diamonds. They are cubic zirconia.
Yeah. Penelope, for Colin and Eloise both, is complete and utter safe space. She is joy. She is forgiveness. Like, she has no spiteful, vindictive bone in her body. When she reads about, even though she's loved him the whole time, and she reads about his women, even after they get together, she can bring up his past in he's nervous about it, but she's not. And when she brings up, when her and Eloise finally, repair their friendship, she can joke about, did you really befriend her because you liked her, or was it to punish me? Like, she finds that funny. She's not mad about it at all. And that's a rarity in any friendship, really. You find that person that just knows you for exactly who you are and lets you be exactly who you are. I mean, they both just, I honestly think they don't realize, even now still, they don't fully realize exactly the kind of champion they have for themselves in Penelope, for real.
Yeah, I very much so.
And I think we were talking about gender, seeing things from two sides of the gender fence. And here we have Eloise with all the debutantes trying to fit in, similarly to Colin last season. And we have very similar personalities amongst these women. They're they're all kind of catty, and they're all trying to single somebody out. They're really trying to find the thing that almost that they can tease, or because while they're trying to talk about their gifts for the queen to become the diamond, they're also trying to find those things to tear each other down. Because look how quickly they tore down Penelope when they found out what they found out. I mean, these are the lady squad. I mean, we have a lord squad. These are the lady squad. They're not even, and I would say, like, Miss Berrigan doesn't get, she doesn't get into it too bad, but she still calls Cressida that blonde backbiter. I mean, they all participate in active open gossip. And
the only one who I do not see participating in any sort of mean-spiritedness is Marianne Hallowell, and that is our
she's just the quietest of the bunch.
She is the quietest. That is the Asian heritage young miss. I wonder who.
But we're watching Eloise going through the same kind of situation that Colin has been going through with the Lord Squad, and they both ultimately chuck that idea of trying to fit in with people they don't want to fit in with anymore, almost at the same time.
Well, without even having to Google, I wonder if this is a little nod. I wonder if this is our posy. Marianne Hallowell's real last name, Jessie Bayek.
The actress?
Yes.
The human. I'm like, the human who plays her?
Yeah.
That's what I was about to say.
I wonder if that's like a little Easter egg.
I don't know. I mean, Yurin Ha said that she went through a lot of.
But she's also from a Korean family.
Well, and I mean, if the picture that I saw today is really the first picture of season production, and Dankworth is in, but without his wife, like.
Doesn't have any Jessie Bayek. But they are both potentially Korean. Yeah, she's from South Korea. North Korean and South Korean heritage. And we don't really know anything about her family. So it could very well be, because how many Korean families do we have in the ton? I want to go back now and listen to all of our Lady Whistledowns and see if anything is mentioned about maids and staff having a hard time working, because we do get a lot of tidbits about the maids in that.
The one Whistledown, when she's proving she's Whistledown, she says the one lady let her maid go simply for asking for a day off.
Yes.
There is that one.
But because this is the quietest debutante, we don't really hear too much. We don't really associate her name as strongly as Miss Livingston or Miss Barrigan or Miss Hardigan and that kind of thing, because she is the quietest one. So I wonder whether they are just sneaking this under the rug and this is who it's going to be. I love when fan theories come to us mid the late. Patty went back and checked, and the Lady Whistledown article that was most recent that talked about someone mistreating their maids, the lady was Miss Newham. So that one doesn't fit, but I do wonder whether it is somewhere, because in one of our newest articles that we have received, which we're going to have to do another part for our season 4 speculations video, I guess, podcast, I guess you'd call it. We've got a lot more information that just keeps popping up recently, so we're going to have to add to, but I've forgotten what my point was.
Well, that we want to check to see, now that we know some things, to look again in season for any more Easter eggs.
But thank you. The article in which specifically states that Sophie Bayek works for one of the hardest families in the ton to work for. That is a little Easter egg right there. And I mean, we've all
Right now we only know about the cowper.
Because Araminta, the name is so stand out. I wonder whether they are just leading us into that belief, setting us up for it. But I mean, it would be odd that they've given us so much backstory for the Cowpers, especially this season, if it's not leading into it next season. Whereas Miss Marianne Halliwell is definitely still background character, but wouldn't it be like the ultimate like switcheroo if it were to be that family instead of the Cowpers? And we've just wound ourselves up with this whole theory working specifically into the Cowpers, and it's not at all. It would be a fun little switcheroo.
It would be very difficult though if they weren't involved in some way. How do they bring Cressida back? Because she's in season 4, but she's been shipped off to Wales.
Yeah.
So they're involved somehow. It's too much of a coincidence for her to be Araminta, and we already know that Jessica Madsen's back for season 4. So
yeah,
why would Cressida need to come back?
Speaking of the debutantes and next season, the next up in our list of scenes that transpire is Benedict dancing with Miss Stowell. And I mean, Benedict was not particularly kind about taking her to the dance floor, but he does take her out. But he chooses a very spirited dance, because I still need to look this up. This is one of the things that I want to look up and post onto our Facebook group, is the different dances specifically mean different things. And I'm not a Regency romance expert, so Patty will be able to probably fill you in a little bit more than me. But I do recall...
Not on the dancing.
I do recall in Pride and Prejudice, specifically, the mum talking about Mr. Bingley, what specific dances he danced with Jane.
Well, in most dances,
he danced romantic dance, and then with the other girl,
specific order.
He only danced once with the other girl, and it was like a high-spirited dance, not a romantic dance. And she's like, oh, well, that signifies nothing, because that's a fun dance. So I do think there are dances that, obviously, if you were to dance the waltz, I think they said that was like...
You could not dance a waltz.
You had to get permission.
Unless you were about to propose or you had already proposed. That's why, like, the dance that Colin interrupts is pretty much a waltz. There's not a lot of movement to that dance. There's not a lot of intricate anything. It pretty much is just them. It's just them waltzing. And if they're waltzing,
dance.
Yeah. And that was going to be the dance where he proposed, because it's pretty much the last dance of the ball, because Colin interrupts it and they have their conversation. Then he stalks off. She follows him and she says, the ball is ending, but can we continue our conversation? Like, she knew that dance he was going to propose. Why he wasn't, why he was letting her go on and on about, might this become love and whatever. Like, I don't even want to get into that right now. Everybody knows how I feel about Debbling. Sorry, Sam, but
did I see somewhere that he is returning for next season?
Did you see that? Because I didn't.
This morning I saw a bunch of people I don't know whether I didn't read enough into it, to be fair. It was on one of the articles of him. I don't know all the names off by heart. I don't want to get it wrong, so I'll just use character names. Himself, Alice, Will.
Oh, when they accepted the National Television Award?
It was an acceptance speech, and it was a conversation that was posted with that article. And they were talking about him returning next season. And I'm like, but I'm pretty sure he's dead.
Well, we honestly don't even know if he went off on his travel yet.
I will.
He just disappeared.
Yeah, he disappeared. But when we do get up to that episode, I have pre-researched the Northwest Passage.
And I'll just say that covert narcissists, when they are publicly shamed and publicly humiliated, they isolate for a long time
in the hopes that people will
just
forget.
Saying.
But Benedict is dancing with Miss Stowell.
Yes, and this I think this is really important, because the queen who has
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, you said who clocks it. I thought you said something about me talking. I was like,
no, who clocks it, Patty?
The queen does. And I think it's important because she is just not impressed with anyone at this point. And it could be an Easter egg that, she's going to be impressed with Francesca. I don't think so. I actually put, and I'll post it in the group the day that this airs. I'm gonna have to mark it down so I know when that is for visual aid. But I honestly think that she was taken aback, because if you put his last name's Milchrist, right? The gentleman who plays young George, just George. and Benedict together.
McIntyre. Josh
Milchrist.
Milchrist.
I just can't remember his first name.
Not
it's
Josh,
like
not James, not Josh.
Yeah, look it up right quick. Anyways, the actor who plays just George, Farmer George, young George. If you put him, and I did a side by side, him and Benedict together, and they are very similar looking. And if he's dancing around and he's tall and, dashing, and I just think that she was taken by him. And I find it important. I really did notice it after seeing all the promos. They had Golda and Luke Thompson do promo together for season 3. And the question, because when promos are done, a lot of the times the production company and stuff will send certain things they want them to talk about, certain points that have to be brought up. That's why we heard about the broken chaise longue so much. That's why we heard about the carriage being soundproof and them not hearing the director so much, because that just sold us on the story. And it gave them something fun and funny to talk about. But every interview they did, it almost came up that the Queen and Luke have never had a scene together. They've never interacted with each other. So I think it's important that she did notice him, because next season is his season.
The song that is singing whilst those two are dancing, Dynamite, has that line in it about a diamond. How are you gonna glow up like a diamond?
So I think he's gonna get his glow up, and I don't want to say prediction, I forecast that Benedict is going to be the incomparable for his season, that her and Penn are going to play games still. Like, I think
she is going to completely flip the script, and
she's going to flip the script. And because her and Penn are now like playing with each other openly, an open chess match of word and wit and influence. And I think that the Queen's going to want to do something just so outrageous. And I think she's going to decide to choose a suitor, a gentleman, instead of a lady.
I think that'll be brilliant.
And I think it's going to be Benedict. And I was telling Tosh this too. I almost think because they're not killing off the Queen, I think they might have George pass away.
Don't even.
And that she's going to be
goosebumps.
She's going to be sad. And yeah. Well, I mean, if they're gonna follow timelines, they could have.
And then her son
we didn't see George at all.
And then her son leans over her and says, "Sorrows, prayers."
But I think that she's going to
imagine saying that to your kid when they've just lost a baby. Like, Jesus Christ, woman.
Well, she's in all these years of having to have her armor on for so long to be who she is to this society. It rusted hardcore. But I think that we're going to see her really take an interest in Benedict, because Benedict reminds her because he is sensitive like George. She knows the real George and everything.
And it's Corey McIlchrist.
Like Milchrist.
Yeah, Milchrist.
Yeah, I just couldn't remember his first name.
Mickelchrist, yeah, or Milchrist.
If we're butchering your name, we apologize.
It's 100% butchered. I need to look up how to pronounce that.
I mean, we're pretty much sitting in a meatpacking plant ruining this last name. But I always thought it was like Milchrist, MYL, right?
Yeah, MYLCHREEEST.
Yeah, I've not seen enough promo to know how.
I know. I was like, I don't want to go watch it now, but I will go watch a promo thing to see how they say his name. But you can't always guarantee that they're saying it correctly either. Yeah,
that's true. That is.
Yeah. Apparently Australians are one of the only ones who pronounce Rihanna's name correctly because of her accent.
Well, I don't. I'm human, so that's my disclaimer.
Well, and human. Sometimes it's just dialect difference. So you say ton? No, the bon ton.
The ton.
You say like ton, like a ton of something, and I say ton because it's the bon ton.
Well, and I say it both ways. It just depends on what comes out of my mouth, honestly.
Yeah, but all the Americans that I've seen say ton.
Well, and I'm from Ohio, and Northern Ohio specifically, and the best I can give you that tells you, like, the one I always get teased about the most is dollar. I don't say dollar, I say dollar. It comes out like an A instead of an O.
Okay, people think that I have an American accent or an English accent, or I've had some really weird ones. I had one person ask about South African once.
I can see that, actually.
I have a weird mongrel
That
accent.
somebody would mistake it for that. Yeah.
It's a bit of everything. She's a worldly woman. So after Benedict dances with Mr. Well, Mr. Well goes up to her mother, and we suspect, so Mr. Well is the mother that has who is deaf.
She's deaf, yeah.
She's deaf. And
Hearing
so
impaired.
she relies on her daughter to kind of inform her. She can only see what she sees, but she cannot read lips or anything. We suspect that she might have been a typical teenager and told her mum that she was maybe a little bit more involved with Benedict than what she is, or maybe that he'd shown more intention than what he had.
I think because of how enthusiastically he said yes to he was ready to dance and then he chose her, I think she got excited. And I think she took that as meaning more than it meant. And her mother has an interesting data processing that none of the other mothers really have. And the fact that she cannot gather information on her own. Her only conduit into what actually happened is her daughter, because only her daughter knows how to communicate with her.
I wouldn't be surprised if she actually sort of like Lord Basilio, if they were high enough in society, they had enough funding, whether she would have a maid who was just a full-time interpreter for her, but when she goes to balls because she's got her daughter, she forgoes it.
Well, and you just don't take a maid to a ball.
Not a maid, an interpreter.
Correct. But even back then, there wouldn't have been such a thing, really. The fact that she's in society is huge.
Basilio has someone to guide him around in his wheelchair.
Remington.
Why do we always say Basilio?
You keep trying to put Basilio in a wheelchair.
Well, I mean,
Basilio's in the gravy boat.
He might be in the wheelchair after he upset his horse.
We don't know how that horse died.
We can speculate.
We have no idea. We have no idea how the horse died. Probably from embarrassment.
Yes, but sorry, yeah, Lord Remington.
Yes, Remington has somebody's got to push the wheelchair. They did not have electric chairs.
No, that would have been interesting. Nor wheels that were fluid enough. They didn't have rubber tires or anything back then, so nothing that was fluid enough for him to comfortably navigate himself around. Yeah.
But so she just has the unique barrier to fully gauging, because and we've heard from Violet for literal years now about all the subtleties that occur in the courtship process. How many dances means what, how many this, what's this. And Benedict is playing the game. And I think because he sees it as a game right now, he's not really thinking about all the rules as he's doing it. I mean, he knows them, but he's just playing the game. So in the moment he's thinking, I've got to dance. I'm a gentleman. I have to dance. I'm going to pick this girl. And, she probably, she would have been finished, but who knows if she's got the full education as everyone else, because we don't know. And she's the only one communicating with her mother. So her mother is getting the story from the girl who lived it, who was super excited to be chosen by a Bridgerton brother. We already know. Yes. And she's very naive. I think she comes off more naive than some of the other girls. So this just, hilarity ensues over the next few episodes because of it. But I think what's important about that dance is that the queen watches him like she's just very, very interested in this gentleman on the floor dancing. And Miss Stowell her and her mother are chasing him for at least 2 more episodes, and which I find funny. They keep saying Colin is the most desired suitor of the season. I don't see anybody chasing him. They are chasing him around people's houses.
There are debutantes who are actively seeking him out, but not mamas, which is a whole different.
Yeah, the mamas they're talking about Lord
the mamas seem disgruntled that the daughters are flocking to Colin because he's not, in their eyes, an advantageous match.
No, he's not.
And
we need to remember that.
We finally get the Benedict from the book who actually follows social protocols and polite niceties, and he very politely excuses himself because he sees the Mondrick family enter the ball, and he's like, this is my out. Thank you, God. Perfect timing.
Because you couldn't leave an interaction without having a legitimate to.
Yes.
And honestly, what he should have said, he said, excuse me, which is what you should say, but he should say, I
For the
I
dancing.
have to speak with this person, or I see this person needs me. You can't just leave an interaction. You can't just leave a conversation.
It has to be for a
So
purpose.
yeah, so think about season 1 when Lord Granville is trying to talk to him and he realizes that his wife is the woman he had
Yes.
been with, and it was awkward, and he's like, oh, my mother needs me. That's how he got out of that interaction.
And
So
Francesca also uses the same, oh, I see my brother calling for me, or
yeah, my brother needs me. Yeah. So that's how you get out of a conversation you don't want to be in. You always say, oh, I see a person that needs to talk to me. But he did walk up to the Mondricks, and he's not.
I think he excused himself, one, because he wanted out, but two, genuinely because he wanted to talk to them and he wanted to be there to
He
support them.
wanted to be the first person to
Yeah.
greet them.
Yep, which is lovely.
It's his granddaddy in him.
Honestly.
It's Lord Ledger coming out.
Yes.
They're new. I want to welcome them in.
Yeah. And I actually see, we were talking about how much Collins like him, but Benedict also, because Lord Ledger has that very cheeky side to him and that very free love kind of side to him. Whereas, like, he was with his wife and he would never break that off and he would never humiliate her, but he was never in love with her. She was just his, I wouldn't even say companion, because companion speaks to a certain sort of souls connecting to me. She's just his wife, and that was just the title. And Lady Danbury
I think
was his
that was a
Lady
marriage
Danbury
of
was his
convenience.
companion. Yeah, Lady Danbury
Mhm.
was his companion. She was the one he loved, and I think he held on to that forever. So I think he also has that understanding that within the ways of the ton, a marriage license doesn't constrict who you can love.
No, because in the ways of the ton, men were expected, even when you marry. I mean, marrying for love was very rare. So
Even by
when you
Penelope
married,
standards, even for Penelope.
yeah, you as a lady, you expected that your gentleman was going to have mistresses. It was just a thing. And women were allowed to take a lover after they produced an heir. So there was, much like Queen Charlotte, like, it's an even day. We're going to do this on even days until we have an heir. You performed your duties until you produced an heir, and then as long as you were discreet, you could take a lover. So a lot of times women might be, or somebody in the home, so it's easier to be discreet. It's not somebody out in public kind of thing.
Mhm.
But it was most married couples, and that's why they had separate bedrooms. Most married couples were not in love sleeping with each other. They were in love with someone else.
And I mean,
Sleeping
imagine
with them
having to
instead.
share like a bed with someone that is a stranger, essentially. In your heart, they are strange.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, as much as I almost feel like my marriage is a business transaction, I don't think I could live. I've proven it. I could not live very many years in that situation. So, yeah, I couldn't do it.
Well, someone didn't explain the societal rules to you the way that Benedict is about to explain them to the Mondrick family, which helps to kind of alleviate a lot of the pressures that they are feeling, because they have been dumped into the society, and as much as they've been on the outskirts of, not even outskirts of society, they're further out than that, but they have touched society, but they have never been a part of it, and so they
Yes.
have never learned the rules of it. And that is why they feel so insecure and out of depth. And also because the title wasn't given to them, it was given to their son. But Benedict helps to explain some of the societal rules. But I think Will kind of takes them and runs with them a little bit too far.
Well, it's just, I think it's the way he perceives it and understands it, because the way Benedict explained
Benedict
it.
was explaining it in way of love.
Yes, you can do what you wanted in
With your
terms of
wife.
public decorum with your wife once you're married.
Yes.
But if you think about it though, Will took it for exactly what it was, because he runs that business with his wife. That is a public thing he does with his wife. And I can see where the miscommunication lies. And I think this whole conversation is important as we come into Benedict's season, because his philosophy here is really what is going to allow him to marry outside of society and live outside of society with Sophie, because he believes you play the game until you find your match. When you find your match and you get married, you can do whatever you want with your wife. And he chooses to live in the country and paint and be an artist, and he can be like I'm done with this life. I'm done playing this game. I didn't like playing it anyway. I now have my match. I'm happy, you know? And so the way he's explaining it is I think how he wants it to be. And it may not be exactly how, because if you really look at like how the Featheringtons, when Archibald was alive, how the Featheringtons interacted, they had their match, they were married, but and I mean, they did what they wanted, but it still wasn't perceived well. And the Cowpers have their match in there, but they're still so worried about their reputation that they try not to have scandal, try not to, they don't want, and I think that Benedict described it in a way of how he wanted it to be. And he sees these examples that fit his narrative. But giving that information to somebody entirely new into society and what Will does with his wife, like, I don't think Benedict truly understands how equal they are in their relationship as partners, because Benedict does come from the Bridgertons, long standing in society, and there is this I don't want to say hierarchy, because I honestly don't think Edmund was an alpha,
I think
and
Edmund would have
Violet is a trad wife. But
Edmund would have never taken Violet's voice away from her whilst giving birth. And she even says, she yells that at Antony. I think Edmund and Violet were equal as well.
Yes. And that's why, like, we haven't fully seen it yet, folks. I think season 4, and it's already been kind of mentioned by Jess Brownell that Penelope is going to be coming into her power more, and Colin is just going to be the wife guy. And you guys can't see me roll my eyes. It's Colin, my wife, Bridgerton. And I hope we see him write more and come into his power too, because they are an equal couple. This is not, and there's no alpha and beta in this relationship. So please don't make it so. No. Please don't make it.
They are a partnership. And not every relationship in the ton is a partnership where there are two equals. We have Edmund and Violet. We have even George.
Will and Alice, I think.
Even George, when he wanted things to go his way, I'm your king. I thought you were just, they weren't even a true partnership until he finally told her everything. And that's when they become a partnership. But for a long time, he was trying to maintain that power
separation.
Yeah. Because it separated his feeling. But anyway, yeah. So I do think that Benedict explained the marriage mask and its rules, and Will tries to apply that to societal rules, which are a completely different ballgame.
And I think that Benedict was trying to explain it in terms of social functions, balls, how you act at a ball, how you act when you go to the opera, how you act when you're at a soiree or, an afternoon tea or whatever. Not every day, like,
not what you can get away with.
Just cannot do. Yeah, it's not about what you can get away with. It's about, you've already found your match, so you don't have to worry about how many dances you dance with somebody. Everybody knows you're married to that person already. Now it would be, you wouldn't do that with someone you're not married to, right? You wouldn't go and ask someone you're not married to dance more than one dance with them. But the two people he said could not stop dancing with each other were married. The two people that were super jokey and jovial with each other. Oh, I know. Like, everybody, those two people, I honestly think that Colin and Penn are going to be dancing together a lot and standing on the sidelines, gossiping with each other a lot. And then when Benedict gets Sophie, finally, him and Sophie are going to be the happy drunks. I don't know if they're going to be in society all that much if it does follow the book. But,
I actually, knowing Sophie's personality, I don't think I can ever see her as a drunk, because she is someone who likes to maintain control because of bad
we'll
things
say tipsy. I think she would walk around with Benedict and have a couple of drinks with him and just be laughy giggly, like they're in their own world. Because the two people that he showed, I wouldn't have picked out that they were, drunk as fiddlers. They just seemed to be really enjoying each other's company, and like nobody else was in the room, and they were just laughing at each other's jokes, which really is also Colin.
I think it was
they did the same thing at the same ball.
I think it was Edmund and Violet, because we already see that Violet likes herself a drink occasionally.
Violet likes a drink. Yes.
Yeah. And then we move along, we gallop along to Francesca trying to work her way through the marriage mart. And Violet introduces Francesca to the first lord, which is Lord Petrie. And he is also a music aficionado.
Well, he loves music. He's not like, it's everything to her. It is her reason for breathing. He just likes it. I mean, they're
Yes.
both into it, but it's a different kind of interest. Like,
Yes.
we'll say special interest, neurodivergent people.
And
It's her
we
hyper
have
focus.
him asking about, whom she's interested in at the moment. And what is interesting is Patty and I looked this up yesterday. And actually, one of the references that she gives of who she's interested in listening to at the moment, and Lord Petrie comments, don't you find his music to be it's not
He
passionate, but it was
the belief is he wrote it for his lover.
mhm.
And don't you find it makes it more passionate? Like, there's a lot of passion behind it. And she says that she just likes the chord progression. And when she's playing it, she's very good. But you can hear how,
Expressive. That was the term he uses.
yes, yeah,
Expressive.
the music itself is very expressive, and if it's played well, it comes off as expressive. But she likes the chord progressions, so that's what she's listening to.
But what we
But
got, and Patty and I looked this up yesterday, is when the Queen, and we'll get to that part in just a moment, but when the Queen finds Francesca playing, what song is it that she is playing? The Appassionata. So it is the same song that she's talking about with Lord Petrie in this moment, is the song that she is playing when the Queen finds her and names her the diamond.
And I think that's because when you bring it up, it's there. So she goes off and gets pointed out, the piano gets pointed to her. She's like, yeah, I'm going to play that.
And see, I can definitely, whilst this interaction is taking place between Francesca and Lord Pedro, we have Violet and Lady Danbury chatting, and they are, Lady Danbury comes up and she says, a mother in her natural hemisphere, like always watching her children and meddling, and Violet kind of explains why she's meddling more with Francesca than some of her other siblings and children. And it's because Francesca is the kind who just jump to get away, and she never pushes herself out of her comfort zone. She takes what is easy in life. Like being in her household, she does not find easy. Going to go live with her Aunt Winnie in Bath, that is easy because it's just one person to contend with. And I can imagine that Auntie Winnie very much just focuses on the music.
Sure.
I don't think Auntie Winnie ever pushes her out of her comfort.
No, she lets Francesca be who she is. And Violet wants what's best for her children, and we're all human. And she does push and nudge each of her kids a little bit outside of their comfort zone.
And I think it is important. Like, yes, it is important to allow your children to be who they are, but not when it's going to be at a detriment to themselves. Like people who, I think in every relationship, even a good relationship is one who will push each other out of your bounds of comfort and take chances that can result in these amazing things. My husband was the one who encouraged me to jump and do this podcast. I wouldn't have done it because I have such self-doubt problems. But when you have a partner who will push you to do those things, and I think that's very much what Violet is doing with Francesca, is she doesn't want her just to settle, oh, well, he likes music as well, that's good enough.
Yeah.
And that is not to say that I think that she settled for John. I think John is a beautiful match. I think he's a beautiful man, and I think they would have had a wonderful life together. Right. R.I.P.
All right. R.I.P. Sir John. And there is a tangent out there, I'll say, of people saying that she stays with Sir John and Michaela's just her side piece kind of thing. Sir John's passing away. No. The minister looked directly at him when he said, "Your dying breath."
Yeah, they've already
it's
set
happening.
It up. And do not disrespect our lovely John like that and their love for that. No.
Nope, not happening.
I would have marched on Shondaland. Don't think I won't do it. I've got the Spartan blood in me.
We'll get our pitchfork. No. March on her house.
We'll get our books out. I can do a lot of damage with a book.
Like I'm not one of the people, although I had infertility issues. I'm not one of the people that Francesca's book was my favorite, and I'm super concerned about the change. I think they'll make it work, and I think they'll create a beautiful story, because I love season 3. This is my couple. This is my favorite couple. And even though there are some opportunities could have been had, and there's some things that I think got overlooked or forgotten, it's still a beautiful story.
Mhm.
So I'm not concerned with that. I would be concerned with completely disrespecting her first union, because that part of the book was beautiful, that she honored her first love. And I think that that's super important. Although I think, like I was telling you, and I never got to this part, re-listening to that podcast where I say, ooh, there's something I need you to remind me to say later, and you
Mhm.
didn't. I'm not blaming you, but I think they're going to play out the honoring the first love while coming into a second love, because it's the same gender, with Violet instead, more so than Francesca, because it's going to be different. It's going to be wildly different. So because it's so different, I don't think Francesca is going to have the issues with, and we've already seen how Violet is in regards to Edmund. So I think that storyline is really going to play out more with that, because they're giving Violet that second act, that second chance.
And I think
So
Violet
she's
is,
going to be
I
the one
think,
that's a little more like, am I desecrating his memory? Am I being unfaithful? Am I being disloyal?
well, and
I think she's going to go through all of those
I don't
things.
think that it is that Francesca loves John less than Violet loved Edmund
Mm-mm.
specifically. Like my husband says to me, my little neurospicy husband, it is not that I love him more than he loves me. It is that he loves me to the absolute fullest of his heart. It's just that I have so much love in me. I love so big and openly, like Violet does, who comes from also a huge family. So I definitely get that kind of, not that she doesn't come from a huge family, so she just had a mum, but I mean, she's got, where her love comes from is her children as well. Every child that she had with Edmund, I think their love just grew for each other as they saw the bits that they loved in each other develop in their children. So I think she has just a huge amount of love. And for Francesca, who is a quiet lover like my husband, Violet just can't comprehend that sort of love.
Right. Yeah, I think that's, but I also think that because Francesca's second chance at love is going to be so wildly different, because it is going to be something that is not socially acceptable in society. There's going to be a lot of reasons. It's not going to be so much, I think, the disloyalty to her relationship and her feelings for Sir John. I mean, we already had like her disappointment at their first kiss at the wedding. I think they're going to play that out though through Violet, and it'll
Yeah.
work. It'll absolutely work because she has been so loyal to Edmund. But I think as the children that knew Edmund are almost all married,
I
Eloise
think
and
Anthony's
Benedict are
going to struggle with it
last.
the most because he is the one who feels like he's stepped into Edmund's shoes. I think he's the one, just like in the book when she danced with the suitor at the masquerade ball and he's like, that's mine. Who are you dancing? And he gets really defensive.
Well, and I wasn't necessarily going there. I think that she has been loyal to her husband's memory because she was still raising the children that knew
Yes.
him
Yeah.
as their father. And when she tells Lord Anderson at the wedding breakfast, I believe my affairs are almost in order. Colin is married. Francesca is about to get married. And the only two kids that are left who remember their father are the two she's written off. She's not even trying with Benedict, and she's not even trying with Eloise. She's like, these are my rebels. I don't know. I don't have it in me anymore. They just are going to be what they're going to be. And she believes those are her affairs that are in order. We still have a long time for Hyacinth and Gregory, but Hyacinth and Gregory have no memory of their father. So it's different. And I think she feels like she would not be dishonoring his memory. She did it the way she felt
Well,
she needed to.
and I love that. I love how Lady Danbury kind of guides Violet as partially as friend, but partially in a motherly,
Motherly
godmotherly
way.
kind of role. Because as Lady Danbury and Violet are talking, Lady Danbury says, "Okay, well, if you think that Francesca is never going to step out of her natural hemisphere and push herself, why don't we put her back into her hemisphere and just see what happens?" And by see what happens, she means let's see what I can make happen.
Right.
She's like, I've got
Lady
my
Danbury is the meddler of all
she
meddlers.
is the fairy godmother. absolute
She
fairy
is.
godmother.
With her
And
little cane, bibbity bobbity. That's her wand. That's
bibbidi
really her
bobbidi boo.
magic wand. Yep,
I
bibbity
love
bobbity boo.
the cane down. And I love that she does that because that is such an iconic moment from the books. You hear the cane coming, you hear the ankles getting thwacked with the, the people complaining that their toes are being squashed, and
I mean,
she's
I
doing it on
understand why
purpose.
I understand why they're not doing it because it's 2024, but I seriously want to see her
Well,
wrap somebody with
actually,
that
I
cane.
don't know why they don't, because I feel like her personality, I've only seen bits and bobs, like snippet videos of her being an absolute royal elderly person in Downton Abbey. Miss Maggie Smith, I don't know her name in the show.
Oh, oh my gosh, she's the dowager
I
late.
have
Yeah.
I have seen the barbs that she has made. I watched a compilation video
Yes.
of like the cruelest things that she said. If she can get
Mhm.
away with it, Lady Danbury,
She's fabulous.
she is so
Fabulous.
mean.
She is amazing. She is so savage and I love it.
It was like the most savage thing I've ever seen in my entire life, and I just got pure Lady Danbury vibes, but Lady Danbury from the book vibe, because let me just
Yeah,
tell you, Lady Danbury from the book is savage.
very
She is the
savage.
terrifying creature that she talks about being in the show when she doesn't really
And
express it.
she's known Penn was whistle down for a long time.
Hmm.
And she decided because this was the last year, I mean, Penn had already started sitting on the sidelines. She was now a chaperone herself. Like she had already technically she had this was her last season and then she'd be considered a spinster. But and Lady Danbury was like, nope, you're my project, little pet. Like this is not gonna happen. So, I just and I we kind of get that moment here. Like instead of I think they wanted Colin and Penn figure it out on their own. It's important for this couple to figure it out on their own because they had so many people interfering season 1 season 2, like all of the interference that occurs with them and all of the kind of obstacles they have because knowing he's not titled and knowing she comes from the family she does, the want of connection and how their families are going to be, but just having the interference with Eloise and all of that stuff, I think it was very important that with this being friends to lovers that they figured it out and got to that point. Yes, we have a little nudge from Mama B, are you really going to lay in your bed tonight and not show up when the woman I know you're in love with is about to be proposed to? Like she really just said that whole speech just to say she's getting a proposal, dude,
Yeah.
So, but I think it's important that they kind of came together on their own. They figured it out on their own. They dealt with their problems on their own because it does show the kind of partnership they're going to have. And every other child she has had to be, I mean, Anthony said it, like you cajole your children, she's even like, you mock me. He's like you rightfully did to me all last season. Like she's been active in all of her kids, but not Colin ever. Like she didn't even know he was anywhere near close to proposing when it was Marina. And she didn't realize everything that was going on, even in her own home. The fact that they were there alone. She doesn't know. I mean, I want to see that conversation. I want to see them sitting there having tea and them like, oh, do you remember that day and this happened? And she's like, what are you talking about? Oh yeah, we were alone and we were, flirty birds and all that.
Yeah. So we have Lady Danbury who she goes up to Francesca and says, all right.
No, no, that's my point of this whole scene. She's standing with Violet. They're talking. Francesca can't hear what they're saying, but Francesca turns around to escape this guy.
Yes.
And she sees Lady Danbury looking so serious. Like she's like, almost like she walked straight to Lady Danbury, like she knows something's up, and Lady Danbury's like, come with me, but not till she walks to Lady Danbury. She's like, I am summoned. Like it's so funny
Lady Danbury can
because she
summon
just
with just a look.
I mean, it's just a look. She knows that something serious is going on, and she kind of uses that to escape. Like, I'm out of here. But she walks right up to her, hooks her arm in, like, let's go. And nobody tells her she was far enough away and there's music and everything else. Like, she did not hear what they were talking about. And
No.
she just turns around, sees Lady Danbury looking all serious, and like, okay,
But
coming.
I love how like originally Lady Danbury was one of the ones that said, oh, Lord Petrie is a lover of the music as well as several other suitors, but she had no intention of Francesca ever settling for someone like Lord Petrie. You could just tell that was just her practice suitor.
Yeah. Lady Danbury is Colin.
Yes.
It's her teaching her, like, okay, I'm gonna let you practice talking to people because I know you're nervous about, the queen bestowing attention on you. So I'm gonna let you kind of feel out for a couple of balls, but then I'm taking over.
Yeah, so Lady Danbury takes her back to her natural hemisphere and plonks her down in front of a piano and then hurries off to go summon the queen, cajole the queen, essentially. And the queen at this point, she says, I've had enough of these chits falling over themselves to impress me when they are nothing but cubic zirconia that is not shining bright. And so she goes to go leave the ball. And Lady Danbury's like, well, I think there is something that you might find rather, I can't remember,
She tells her to go look
dazzling.
at a piece of art
Piece of
in that
art.
room, not even the piano. Like
No.
she tells her, you need to see this specific art piece. I think you'll
And
find it interesting.
and mind you, like the Queen 100%, they have known each other for what, 40-ish odd years at this point. They are like the Queen 100% knows when she is being managed by Lady Danbury, but she trusts her enough to go along with it.
Yeah.
So she,
Or, I mean, she specifically might have brought up, I don't remember the art piece or whatever, but she
yes.
knew the queen would want to see it.
Yes, but as she walks into the ballroom, it's not even Francesca's playing that I want to get into. It is her outfit. I absolutely love it. And I know that Bridgerton don't go with
Which
proper
her?
colors. Oh, sorry, the Queen's outfit. It is this silvery purple, very soft lilac with like a silver. And then in her hair and her jewelry,
It's like shooting stars.
it is shooting stars laced through, but in a seashell formation. It is in that like that really. It is 100% from a. I could almost promise you it is like a drag style of wig because that is the wigs that you see on Drag Race, RuPaul's Drag Race all the time. It's very drag, but it is stunning. And the dress, it's probably one of my favorite dresses on the Queen. The lilac is absolutely stunning. But what's interesting is lilac in the books and in Regency time was after your first year of mourning, wearing black, you were allowed to go into soft lilacs and grays. Not that they follow Regency etiquette of clothing. Clothing is not Regency at all, but I just thought I'd mention that anyway. But the dress is just absolutely stunning, and it's
No, yeah, and that is something that I wanted to talk about with it, this being like the celestial ball or whatever. That everybody has, they say that everybody
or I'm on. Yeah, you're
with all the, this being the celestial ball or whatever, and everybody, they say when you when you want to get somewhere in life, like you hit your star to, I can't remember the exact thing, but I kind of felt that with the queen.
her
And I'm
necklace
trying to look up
was nearly the
specifically.
same as
Yeah.
Penelope's.
Yeah, it's a different type of star though. And I
But
wanted
it's
to look at
very
it before.
reminiscent of Penelope's.
Yeah.
We've got
But with her having the shooting
England
stars,
and our
like
Queen
people
of
are
Gossip.
wishing, people are wishing on the queen to choose them, and her headpiece was shooting stars. I loved that. Because what do you wish on in the night sky? You wish on a shooting star.
Mm.
And I gotta click on that's not but like all the little, and she has stars like all across her bodice. It's very shiny like stars, but when you go in, there are some stars, but there's also like, I would say daisy flowers, like similar to the engagement ring. With like a pearl diamond in the center and then around it. But she's got all sorts of stars down her bodice. But because people are her star is the North Star, I think, on her neck is the North Star. But because everybody is wishing that the queen would bestow her favor on them, that her headpiece was shooting stars. I loved that so much.
And so there was another piece that I found quite interesting. So in this moment, when the Queen is talking to Francesca, if you actually clock Brimsley in the background, he has a really soft expression on the face. Keep in mind, Brimsley was the one who wanted Francesca as the season's diamond, or at least he says, "Oh, this is a Bridgerton girl. We've had a lot of luck with the Bridgertons in the past." So Brimsley was the first to try to set this up. So I quite like that he kind of has this like, I clocked it first, but he just has this soft, gentle expression on his face.
And I think with all of the looks between the two of them this season, I think that Brimsley and Danbury were kind of working together.
I can see that happening.
Because I think they've both figured out that they are the queen's people.
Yes.
And they want her to pick someone that is, you know, and I think Lady Danbury knew that Francesca was just, she wanted to be married, but she didn't really have like this big idea of love and all that. So she figured this would be an easy win for the queen, right?
Yeah.
Like she's gonna, if she picks Francesca and whomever she brings into the mix, Francesca is probably gonna choose them because she just wants to be married and she's not looking for this epic love. Like Daphne was looking for this big fairy tale love. Antony wasn't, he was looking for a specific type of woman to be a viscountess. He wasn't looking for love. So that created that whole mess.
Yeah.
Because Edwina would have been perfect, a little too perfect, Edwina, but Edwina would have been perfect as a viscountess. She was well trained and everything else, but love got in the way. And so when we get to this season, I think they wanted to shoot her a softball together and they chose this person that they figured would be very docile. But in the end, they didn't take into account how much she was going to struggle, but she struggles internally. So like nobody really saw it. And that's why John won out in the end. And it is a love. That's how she found that love because he saw how uncomfortable she was in those settings and he sought her out in a quiet place. He did the exact opposite of everyone else.
Well, and we have at this point, we have Francesca playing the appassionata.
Appassionata.
I'm like, a passion fruit. She's playing a passion fruit.
and that's why she is in love with music. That is why that's so important. She's passionate.
Well, and it's
but
not,
for
it's not
the
just
music.
her that's in love with music. What they kind of do talk about it a little bit, but in real life, the Queen Charlotte and George were both huge fans of musical talent as well. And that whole story that Queen Charlotte tells in the Queen Charlotte series about meeting Mozart is true. So I've got this little blurb of information about it. It says, in 1764, an 8-year-old Mozart played for the king and queen. He subsequently dedicated 6 sonatas to the harpsichord with violin or flute accompaniment to the queen, because the queen specifically she was amazing at playing the harpsichord, as was George. The letter he
George
sent
played the flute, so
as well.
they could play together.
He played the flute at Kew specifically. This is all in real life, people, not in Bridgerton universe. And apparently when he was at Kew for treatments, he would play the flute. So Mozart sent a letter to the Queen in real life, and it says, to the Queen Madame, full of pride and joy at daring to offer a homage to you, I finished these sonatas in order to lay them at your feet of your majesty. I was, I confess, intoxicated with vanity and ravished myself when I perceived the genius of music at my side. It is said that everything should be allowed to genius. I owe mine the happiness of pleasing you, and I forgive it its caprices. Deign, madame, to receive my poor gift. That is a young boy who just feels so much gratitude to the attention that the king and queen gave to him to encourage him in his musical pursuits, and to encourage that when you are so passionate about something in life, nothing else matters. That should be your main focus. And I think the queen realizes that Francesca, yes, she wants love, but her main focus in life is still her music.
Well, and I think the queen was attracted, I don't want to say attracted to her like that, but she was attracted to her as the sparkler because instead of trying to impress the queen, she was playing for herself.
Yes.
And I think what the queen misses in that moment, though, is the fact that Francesca is passionate. Francesca is passionate, but she's passionate for the music. She loves the music. And the way she's playing that appassionata is very expressive, is very passionate, but that passion doesn't translate into courtship.
Yes.
Like even with John, it works because it's quiet. Like she loves him because he lets her be quiet. He lets her be her. And that just shows like every Bridgerton goes through that first.
She doesn't have to love him loudly for him to feel it.
Yeah. Well, I think he loves her even in his own quiet way. He loves her so much. She can't help but love him for loving her, I think. And I'm not saying she didn't love him enough, and that we just know that ultimately her love with John is very sweet, it's very first love-esque. And it's even written in the books almost like that, where it's definitely love, but it's just the it's not as passionate as when she gets with Michael. So I think that in showing that early, we're seeing that maybe John was passionate for her, he loved her, but she was still passionate for music mostly. And she loved that he was easy, and she loved that he loved her. Because most of the time, that first person that every Bridgerton has as kind of a mistake, they believe that person loves them. Colin only believes it because Marina says it. I love you. It's not until Penn screams it in the street that he realizes the difference, right? So I think that for Francesca, John was that first love of I love him because he loves me. And it does grow into more as time goes on, and she really does get to be who she is. But it really is Michael, or in the show, it's going to be Michaela, but Michael that brings out the passion in her where she can feel. I think they're going to make it be like, I can feel what I feel when I'm playing with this person.
Yeah.
And that's how she's going to know the difference.
Yeah. Speaking of passions that go astray, let's move on to the Featherington family.
We didn't go astray. We were still talking at least about Francesca.
No.
We weren't talking about gravy boats.
No. Passions that go astray is what I mean by passions that you think are being passionate but aren't passionate the way. What I'm saying is it went astray in his britches instead of out of his britches.
Oh my gosh. What I'm saying is we are now going to watch Sex Ed.
I've had a kid. I can't laugh that much.
This scene is so amazingly funny and so amazingly awkward. It is what every parent's nightmare is, birds and the bees wise. But can you imagine having to tell your what would be now 24 and 23-year-old daughters the birds and the bees? She was just hoping and praying the husbands would do it, and they did not.
Well, okay, so she leads the girls, she grabs the girls, she leads them into, as we said, a dining room, hopefully where there are no men behind any partitions.
Basilio's crying in a corner.
Oh, whoops, I was muted. The whole reason that Portia drags them into a room is because Philippa is just boldly saying out in public with people passing by, Alvy and I lay with each other frequently, or was it just this morning?
Well, and this is the first time that Portia has tried to keep her children from drawing negative attention to themselves. They are always talking about inappropriate things in public that you're not supposed to. Like everybody says, why didn't, Colin wanted Penelope to tell him to his face about Marina being pregnant. She did try. She talked about her being in love with somebody else. She saw the love letters. She was trying to give every indication that there was something going on to him without breaking the societal rule of you do not talk about pregnancy. You don't even say the word pregnancy. You were supposed to say with child. You were not supposed to use the word pregnant. And Prudence says
her
pregnant
state,
in public.
Confinement.
Yeah.
Laying in. I was reading a whole article the other day about the different terminology they would use for this. She will be in.
They did not say pregnant at all. Yes. It was considered vulgar and crass. Yeah. And that is why women are not allowed in society when they start showing. Yes. And Prudence says pregnant in public, so many times.
You do not talk about sex in public. You don't talk about anything. You can talk about flower arrangements and cross stitching, ladylike things, but
how I painted this table.
So they go into the dining room, and basically Prudence is saying, we tried laying together again as man and wife, but I did not enjoy it. And Portia, I think this is one of those ones where I actually just had to play it because we can never do it justice.
No. Good job, Polly Walker.
A woman's pleasure is somewhat more subtle than a man's. You see, when he inserts himself.
Inserts himself? Inserts himself where?
It's like, if it was any other voice, I think it would have still been funny, but not. I need a coughing intermittence.
Was I supposed to be talking?
No. I just need
and what I love too is that Portia, who is normally so direct and her voice is normally so strong, she's super breathy and airy. Like you can tell this is the last conversation she wants to be having with anyone.
I actually think that Polly Walker and Nicola Coughlan both had a cold in this episode, because there is a few times where I clocked them sounding actually a little bit breathy and a little bit wheezy in a couple of the conversations. I put too many in there. Yeah, I do think that they were sick, but I think Harriet Kane's, because she has such a sing-song highs and lows, she has one of those really fun voices that inserts himself. Yeah,
Well, and she needed to deliver that line, because if anybody has watched the entire show, she has been married at this point for like
18
months, almost 2 years, for Mr. Finch.
Poor little Finchy. Literally, poor little
and
Finchy.
I love, like, what in the Netflix thing where they watch their scenes or whatever, and they're watching the scene.
Actually, you know what? Poor staff. How many britches have they cleaned? They need a pay
what
raise.
is this man doing?
They need a pay raise.
And no offense, like her staff at her home, like somebody should have gone to her and said, "What are you doing? Why do his pants look like this? You're not getting pregnant. I need to give you an education." But but I love the promo where they watch the scenes and they talk about them, and Polly and Bessie and Harriet are together and they're talking about this scene, and Harriet says that I'm not going to remember his name right now. I know it's McDonald's his last name, right? What's his first name? Look it up. Anyways, he said that Mr. Finch was not going to educate her. She would want to do it when she wanted to do it. So he was consent goal. Lorne. Thank you. So Lorne had said that Finch was waiting for her to initiate, because he wanted to know she wanted to do it. Yeah, give consent, and he was the king of the consent goals. And I'm like, that even beat Colin.
He writes the manuscript on consent.
Yeah.
So, like, I love that Portia has done such a poor job with this. I mean, she does better than I still think she does better than Violet in this respect, because she still definitely was the one that had to kind of have a go at Violet. And we saw how incredibly uncomfortable Violet was. She did not want to have this conversation because she's a proper lady. Whereas Portia kind of just gets down and does what she has to do for her children. Yes, she should have had this conversation before they were married, but she's still doing it, and she's still doing it openly and very directly. She's not shy about it. She's not shaming them. She's explaining how a woman's pleasure works, that it can be pleasurable for a man and woman if you do it correctly. And granted, I don't think she ever once found pleasure with her husband. And if she did, it was by accident, not for any choices that he made in the bedroom.
Like, that's why she believes it's subtle.
Yes. But like, as she then explains, Penelope, that although she did not find pleasure in her marriage, she found pleasure in her children. And we got the same sentiment from Violet when she was going to be forced to marry Nigel Burbrook. She said, well, your marriage might be miserable. Sorry, Daphne. She said your marriage might be miserable, but you will have a family.
And basically all that is you have to find the silver lining.
So I mean, we do have moments where Portia and Violet kind of mimic each other in life and the sentiments that they say, but I will give props to Portia for having a very tough conversation that even mums in today's generation may not want to be so forthcoming with.
I never got the talk.
Exactly. And 2024, and I'm sure there are still mothers who will not have that conversation with their children, who think that the only education that they need is abstinence.
My mom literally believed, I love you, my mother. But she literally believed that if she gave us the talk and educated us and taught us that this thing exists, we were going to run out and find it. So she just was like, put it off. I'll put it off. I'll put it off. We had a specific age when we were allowed to date that I think she planned on. She would tell us then, but I didn't start dating then. So she didn't. And then my sister started dating somebody without it being like a big announcement at home, right? So yeah, so it just blew up in her face. I mean, so Portia did better than most mothers.
Yeah. So our last piece of information that we want to talk about today, and we do have to backtrack a little because we forgot to add this part in, but it goes along with this part anyway, so it doesn't really matter. When Eloise had confided in Cressida and explained about Colin giving Penelope the marriage smart listen. She was not discreet about it. You could see Miss Livingston leaning in with a look of glee in her face of, oh, this is a juicy little tidbit. So whilst this conversation is going on, in the dining room, you can see just little flutters in the room beginning. Now I have the full list. I have the full burn list of pictures of who said what.
Well, and first I want to point out too, because I think this is a theory I haven't fully looked into it in every single scene, but I pretty much believe that any scene that a person is pivotal in pushing Penelope specifically, her story arc forward, they are wearing a butterfly shaped thing. Mostly it's in the jewelry. And Miss Livingston's necklace is very butterfly shaped. It's almost like sideways, like they're flat, but instead of being up and down, they're sideways, going around
side profile,
like they're circling her neck.
Yeah.
But even when you zoom in, it's like there's a little jewel and then these jewels coming off of it. So it's definitely butterfly shaped. So I just wanted to point that out. Like because she is the one who officially spread the rumor. She's pivotal in this moving Penelope story forward.
But I do think that we have to give props to Cressida in this moment that Eloise walks off to go stuff her face with chocolate, like every should, and
like I would be doing. Let's be real here.
No, we would be over by the macaroni
and she hikes
table.
her dress up to practically her knee. I mean, she's like, I'm running to the chocolate table.
I waited for this all evening. Let me at it. But Eloise is now out of eyesight, out of earshot, and Miss Livingston knows what Cressida, and this is almost like a test that she gave to her. Has anyone heard any interesting gossip tonight? And Cressida's like, nah, I haven't heard anything. I don't know what,
And I think that was a real growth moment for Cressida. I think that's where
huge growth.
We learned that Eloise is having influence on her.
Yeah, a positive influence.
Instead of like with the Lord Squad, like
beforehand, Cressida wouldn't have even have Miss Livingston would not have had to have asked beforehand. The second Cressida,
she'd have
Eloise, Cressida would have been, hey, have you heard this? Have you heard this? Spread it around exactly as Miss Livingston is doing right now.
Correct. And I think that the difference between like Colin did everything he could to fit in with the Lord Squad, with that group of people, to the point of losing himself.
Yes.
Almost. So he did not influence them really in any way.
He put on the armor and he sprayed sea salt on that armor.
But Eloise struggles so much to change who she is for others. And I think that is why, like, Penelope allows Colin to be who he is. Penelope accepts Eloise for who she is because Eloise cannot be anything else. Colin can. Colin can create. And that's a Pisces thing, I'll tell you, because I can tell you how many times I went to camp and I was a different name every time when I was young. Like I went one time as MJ. I went one time as Leah. I just wanted to be anyone but myself in my preteen years. So Colin can absolutely create a character, and he does. His real life persona is whomever he wants it to be, but Eloise cannot. So Penn is the same thing for them, but different, where for Colin, she allows him to be himself, brings him out of that. And for Eloise, she's like, I love you almost like I love you anyway, but it's not an anyway thing. It's like, you are this person and I accept it. And nobody else fully accepts Eloise like that. Like even when the girls are doing this conversation and she's telling the story about the teacher and how she always says the wrong thing at the wrong time, even that is like, they don't comment on the thing she's saying so much as how she's saying it. You'd be a great public speaker. But really, would she? I think that's playing into her storyline. That's a thought I have.
At this point, Colin, he's going to be home any minute. Start dinner. At this moment, and I need to pee.
Let's edit that out.
I'm just going to leave it in. So
you're going to go behind a screen?
No, I'm going to get myself a gravy boat.
That will never not be funny to me.
I will never be able to eat from a gravy boat ever again.
No, not happen.
So Colin and Penelope are now talking, and he is someone who I think is very aware of his surroundings. And even though he is completely clocked into Penelope, like he is aware immediately of like whispers around him, but they weren't whispering in a way that was
they were whispering
subtle.
on purpose to be loud. Yeah.
They were doing it in a very catty way to make Penelope over here and actively shame her
And
out loud to everybody else. And
did you notice, like, she was completely surrounded. They were all on the one side, and the only way she had a way of escape was Colin stepping to them to ask them what they were whispering about.
And interestingly, the subtitles actually got this scene wrong. The subtitles in this scene say that it's Miss Livingston that is saying these lines, but it is actually Miss Malhotra, who is our Indian debutante for the season. And she says, "It is rather unseemly that Miss Featherington took his help."
And then
Miss Livingston,
like, it is pitiable.
Pitiable, I think. Then we have Araminta, Lady Keswick, and Lady Livingston. And it's Lady Livingston who is also a sour little puss. And I have some words to describe her, some Australian words that I will not even put on this podcast because that is rude.
In America, we just say, "See you next Tuesday."
Yes. And then it's even actually, and then Miss Livingston turns to Miss Malhotra and says she's done for, like after her mother has already just given it an absolute blow by the of the ages.
Mm-hmm.
And Colin, I love that he immediately was like, "I'm not going to tolerate this. My social protocol does not extend to you guys being bitches, like actively being bitches and openly." He's like,
and this, like, somebody said about the Pall Mall game that happens in Eloise's season. I saw it on a TikTok that they couldn't wait for that because in that Pall Mall game, Penelope is cheering Colin on from the sidelines, but it's distracting everyone else, which I think is going to be them like being schemy together.
Yeah.
But Anthony gets frustrated, and Anthony calls her out. And then Colin jumped on Anthony, like, "Don't talk to my wife like that."
Yeah.
And you see that here. You see that here. Like, we don't have the scene at the end where he tells the whole ton she's whistled down and how proud he is of her and everything else, because he wasn't wrong. He was never ashamed of her. And he is willing to stand up for her, which is why the end of season 2 is still an anomaly. And I believe it's because he was put on the spot, because Colin has to write something out and practice it. He has to write down the perfect words and practice it. Every time he gives a speech that he knows he's given a speech, it's utter perfection. But when he is put on the spot and he has to say something in the moment, which tells me 2 blue pools, he did not necessarily go there expecting for that to happen, because 2 blue pools tells me all I need to know.
We are going to wrap this episode up today because I can hear my boys coming in that house and they are going to mummy time. But
Ezra's going to attack.
He is. In our next episode, we will finally get to the end of this episode and wrap up our side stories, where we will get to talk about the Feathering sisters going home with their husbands, Lady Whistledown's articles, very, very Barbie. Lady Danbury finds out that she's going to have a visitor, and we are going to, I think, really, really deep dive into Eloise and Cressida's friendship, as well as Portia and Penelope's relationship together. But for today, gentle listeners, we will leave it there and continue on next week's episode. If you have anything in particular you would like us to cover, or any Bridgerton knowledge you would like to share, please head to our Facebook page, The Ladies Bridgerton. And if you are enjoying our podcast, please remember to click follow on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you are listening. Once again, thank you for listening to the musings of 2 mad women. Yours truly, Tash the Kiwi.
And Lady Patty.